Have you ever felt that instant regret, the moment the door closed behind someone? Not because they left, but because deep down you knew it was you who pushed them away. With your anger, with that defiant look, with words that sounded strong but were really just a pathetic attempt to hide your own insecurity. That feeling, it doesn't fade easily. It's like you just shattered the only thing that mattered. And all you can do is stand there, frozen, watching it break at your feet, choking down the lump in your throat. And then you think, if only I had stayed calm, if only I hadn't reacted like a wounded kid. But there's no more if only. What you lost isn't coming back. All that's left is you, and the fractured ego you now have to figure out how to live with. The pain men carry doesn't show up in tears. It shows up in how we walk back into the world, smile like nothing happened, while inside it's still a war zone. If you've ever lost the one thing that truly mattered, just because you couldn't control yourself, this video is for you. Don't just scroll past it. Watch it to understand why you keep repeating this cycle, and more importantly, how the hell to break free from it. What you're about to hear next could change the way you see your entire life. Hit subscribe, like, and stay with me, because the final minutes will be the most important. There are moments in life when you're forced to sit down and bow your head to reality. Not because you have nothing left to lose, but because you finally accept that you're no longer in control. And I'm not saying this from some book. I'm speaking from experience. There were times when I did everything right. I worked hard, kept my word, loved people with kindness, showed patience, made amends, endured, took responsibility. And still, everything fell apart. The results never came. The person I trusted most turned their back on me. My efforts went up in smoke. You find yourself standing there in the wreckage, looking around, asking, where did I go wrong? What else could I have done? The truth? Nothing. There's nothing else you could have done. And if you live long enough and live honestly, you'll come to understand this. Most of what breaks us in life are the things we can't control, yet keep trying to. You can't control who loves you or who walks away. You can't control recognition, betrayal, luck, or the cruelty of life. But you still cling to it, as if holding on a little longer will change the outcome. And that clinging, that's what strangles you from the inside. In Stoicism, this is called the dichotomy of control. Simply put, life is divided into two distinct realms. One contains what you can control, and the other holds everything else. And here's the cruel joke. Most of life lives in that everything else category. You can't control what others think of you, how they feel, or whether they keep their promises. You can't control results after effort, whether a message comes or doesn't, the rain on the day of your interview, or the sudden coldness from the person you love. But you keep living like you can. You live like the world owes you something. And then you die inside when you realize it doesn't. I remember once spending nearly 3 years building something I believed was the most important thing in my life. I put everything into it: time, money, trust, patience, even vulnerability. I guarded it like a soldier defends a fortress. I believed if I just tried hard enough, it would last. And then it vanished, in a way so absurdly simple it felt surreal. Like a seen message with no reply, like a quiet turning of the back, just enough to make sure nothing would ever be the same again. It wasn't the shock of the loss that hurt most. It was the realization that I no longer had a shred of control, and I had to swallow that in silence. No one gave an explanation. No one took responsibility. No one had to. And it was in that moment I finally understood something no book could teach. Some battles you're not meant to win. Not because you're not good enough, but because it's not your battle. You don't get to decide the outcome. You only get to choose how you walk away. That was the first time I let go. Not gave up, but let go of the illusion. What I once thought was strength, trying to control everything, turned out to be the prison I built for myself. I was locked in by expectations, by hope, by needing others to react the way I thought they should. And when I broke free of that cage, I didn't feel weak. I felt free. The truth is, no one teaches us this as kids. We're told, if you try, you'll succeed. Be kind and good things will come. You can control your own destiny. Nice words, but they're not true. Sometimes you do everything right and life still stabs you in the back. Sometimes you work yourself into exhaustion and no one gives a damn. Sometimes you do all the right things and life still punches you in the face. Not because you're not enough, but because some things were never in your hands to begin with. This is when you realize Stoicism isn't just some dry philosophy, it's a survival code. When you understand what's yours to hold and what isn't, you begin to live honestly. You stop clinging. You stop trying to control other people. You stop living through expectations. You stop demanding fairness from life. And that's when you start living like a man. Not because everything goes your way, but because you've learned how to stand your ground when it doesn't. You begin to see clearly. True power doesn't come from holding on. It comes from knowing what to let go of. And only then do you finally have the space to do the one thing that actually matters. Take control of yourself. And that's where reason steps in. You may know where the line is drawn between what you can and can't control, but unless you learn how to use reason to steady yourself in the middle of emotional chaos, you're still going to fall. Because understanding pain is one thing, staying clear-headed through it is another. And if you've ever lived through loss, betrayal, or failure, you know this truth firsthand. Reason doesn't come naturally. It must be forged, and that's exactly what I'll break down next. There's something more dangerous than circumstances, something that can destroy you faster than failure, betrayal, or loss, and that's your own emotions in the face of those things. Because the truth is, life doesn't kill you with adversity. It kills you with how you react to that adversity. And if you've never lost control, if you've never exploded, said things you regret, done things you despise, then you've never truly been tested. Everyone's composed when the seas are calm, but what defines you is what you hold on to when everything falls apart. I've lost control many times. I've let anger lead the way, let pride cloud my judgment, lashed out just to prove I wasn't weak. But when the dust settles, what's left isn't victory, it's wreckage. Shattered relationships, a career in decline, self-respect in ruins. Emotions, when left unchecked, will destroy everything you've built in seconds. And the most painful part? Waking up the next morning, looking in the mirror and not recognizing the person staring back. You ask yourself, how the hell did I become this? Stoicism doesn't say emotions are bad, but it makes one thing clear. Every emotion must be ruled by reason. Not because we're robots without feeling, but because we're human beings who can choose. And that power to choose between action and reaction, between reason and instinct, is where we take back our freedom. Emotions are data, but reason decides direction. Let me be blunt. You're not angry because someone hurt you. You're angry because you gave them the power to. You're not in pain because someone left. You're in pain because you believe they had to stay. You're not anxious because the world is hard. You're anxious because you expected it to go your way. Every negative emotion you're drowning in doesn't come from the world. It comes from the expectations you've placed on it. And once you see that, you finally start to regain control over yourself. I once read a line by Marcus Aurelius. He wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength." Sounds abstract, but it's not. When someone insults you, you have two options. One, react like a cornered animal, lash out, escalate, lose yourself. Two, stand still, observe. Realize that the words only touch you if you let them. Reason is that pause between stimulus and response. It's where you take the wheel back. And without that pause, you're just a body being tossed around by the current. Uncontrolled emotion is a form of slavery. You think you're free, but really you're being dragged around by hormones, by unhealed wounds, by an ego that flinches every time it's touched. And everything you do is just a reflex. No choice, no intention, no strength. How can a man lead his life when he can't even lead his own anger? How can you build a lasting relationship if you lose your grip every time things get hard? How can you accomplish anything meaningful if a single critical comment knocks you off course? I get it. Staying calm is the hardest thing, but it's also the most valuable. And it doesn't come from reading books, watching motivational videos, or listening to podcasts. It comes from standing face to face with yourself in your darkest moments and choosing not to let the darkness win. It comes from practicing daily. When you're criticized, don't react. When you're misunderstood, don't rush to defend yourself. When you're hurt, don't turn your pain into a weapon. That's real strength, the kind the world might not see, but you'll know damn well it's there. And when you start living like that, something strange happens. People begin to trust you. Not because you act tough, but because you don't let emotions shake your core. You become the anchor. In your family, in your work, in every conflict. Not because you're always right, but because you don't let rage grab the wheel. We live in an age where everyone reacts too fast, too hard, too emotionally. Everyone has something to say, but few know when to shut up. Everyone thinks they're right, but few stop to ask, will this action make me respect myself afterward? And that is the only question worth asking when emotion surges. If I do this, will I still respect myself tomorrow? If the answer is no, don't do it. And if you can master that, then congratulations, you're no longer a victim of your emotions. You own them. That's when you begin to live by reason. Not because reason is always comfortable, but because it's the only road to real freedom. And from there, you'll finally be ready for what comes next. The harsher trials. The punches life throws not to break you, but to test how far you've come. The best thing you can do is imagine those storms before they hit, so when they do, you don't panic. You've already trained for this. But that's a conversation for the next part. This isn't just a video, this is the reminder you needed today. Hit subscribe and like if you want someone in your corner, pushing you to live by your real values. Let me say this once, and make it clear. If you've never sat alone in a room and imagined the person you love most vanishing without warning, then you've never truly prepared for life. If you've never closed your eyes and asked yourself, what happens if tomorrow I lose everything? If I'm betrayed? If I end up paralyzed after an accident? If I wake up and there's no one left by my side? If everything I'm leaning on today disappears tomorrow without a trace? If you've never pictured that, then you're living under the illusion that everything will be fine. And I'm sorry, but life doesn't work that way. Stoicism has an ancient practice, negative visualization. Sounds grim, but it's the strongest mental vaccine I've ever known. It asks you to imagine the worst-case scenario. Not to make you pessimistic, but to stop life from sucker punching you when it hits. You think you're strong? Good. Then sit down and picture losing it all. No career, no partner, no friends, no health, no clear path forward. Then ask yourself, would I still have the sanity to carry on? I've had sleepless nights out of fear. Not fear of death, fear of losing the things I thought were forever. Fear of checking my phone and finding a breakup text. Fear of a late-night call with bad news. Fear that one mistake could collapse everything I've built. But then one day I changed how I approached it. I stopped running. I sat still. I let myself picture the worst. I imagined the person I love walking away without a second glance. I imagined the day my bank account hits zero, no one answers my emails, and the people who once believed in me now look at me with contempt. I let myself step into that darkness, not to surrender, but to prepare. So if it ever comes, I won't be shocked. And strangely, that's when I felt lighter. Not because I resigned myself to a tragic fate, but because I finally understood. Everything I have, I'm just borrowing. Love, work, health, money, none of it is mine forever. They come, and one day they'll leave. The only thing I can control is who I am when they do. No dependency, no clinging, no sense of entitlement that anything or anyone must stay. People say don't think negative thoughts. I say the opposite, think negatively, but do it on purpose. Think deep, think far. Think to the point that when life turns on you, you're not stunned. You've already met that version of reality, in your mind, 1,000 times, and every time you visualize it, you forge another layer of armor, not to go numb, but to stay steady. Stoics don't hope for adversity, but they never pretend it won't come, because it will. Someone will leave you, someone will betray you, someone will die before you get to say goodbye. The job you're gripping will be replaced, the accomplishments you're proud of will be forgotten. And the things you fear most might already be on their way, quietly, mercilessly. The question isn't whether you can avoid it. The question is, will you be ready to meet it head on, eyes wide open? This isn't mysticism, this is preparation. Like a soldier going to war, no one wants to get hurt, but everyone learns how to treat a wound. No one wants to see blood, but everyone needs to know what it looks like. And if you live like some dreamer thinking everything will work out somehow, I'm sorry, but you'll be the first to snap when the wave hits. But if you've trained your mind to face the worst, then when it happens, you won't panic. You won't complain. You'll just nod, I've been expecting you. I know many people fear imagining worst-case scenarios. They think it attracts bad luck. I don't believe that nonsense. I believe in preparation. I believe in getting back up faster when life knocks you flat. And that only happens if you've practiced falling mentally before you ever hit the ground in real life. I don't live to avoid pain. I live to be ready for it. Because I know it's part of the game. No pain, no growth, no loss, no value. No darkness, and you'd never know what light you're capable of creating. And once you've done that inner prep, once you've sat alone and stared down your worst-case scenario without flinching, you'll start to see something shift. Each day that passes, where everything's still intact, still here, still yours, that day becomes a gift. Not a gift you're owed, a gift you're grateful for. Not because it'll last forever, but because you're aware it won't. And that awareness makes you treasure it before it disappears. From that point on, you'll live differently. You'll live deliberately. No longer a blind optimist praying for a perfect world, but a man who's ready to face the worst with steel in his spine. And that right there is your turning point. From reaction to readiness. From weakness to mastery. And if you've already stood in the darkest corners of your mind without crumbling, then you're ready for the next part. A dialogue with yourself, not to complain, to confront, to evolve. And that's where I'll take you next. There's a kind of exhaustion I believe every man who's lived honestly has faced at some point. Not the kind that comes from work, not from lack of sleep, but from a mind that just won't shut off. The kind that lingers when night has fallen, the phone is off, and the world around you is silent. But your head is still spinning like a damn blender, replaying old conversations, old mistakes, things you wish you hadn't done, words you wish you'd said but didn't. And then it starts, the self-blame, the anger, the mental loop that no one knows you're stuck in but you. I lived like that for a long time, not because I didn't want to change, but because I had no idea where to start. Everything inside felt tangled. A mess of emotions, half-formed thoughts, unresolved decisions, and memories that wouldn't shut up, no matter how hard I tried to push them away. My mind was constantly busy, but never truly clear. Then one simple thing, something seemingly insignificant, changed everything. I started writing. Not content, not posts for Facebook, not something for anyone else to read. Just writing for me. Writing to dig inside. Writing to finally see who the hell I actually was. The Stoics called it self-examination. Every day they carved out time to look inward, and not in some shallow what made me smile today way, but in the real way, the raw way. Looking at uncontrolled anger, at careless words, at moments of cowardice, avoidance, fake strength that masked internal fear. They wrote it all down, line by line, detail by detail, so that every night they could hold a mirror up to themselves. And a mirror doesn't lie. Blank paper doesn't make excuses for anyone. I remember one entry I wrote, barely a few lines. I feel angry she didn't reply. I feel abandoned, but honestly she didn't do anything wrong. I'm overreacting. My ego's bruised. I need to learn to let go. Just a few sentences, but after writing them, I exhaled like I'd just untied a knot in my chest. It was like I no longer needed to prove anything. I just needed to be honest. Honest with myself, a skill most men were never taught. We're taught to bury, to shrug it off, to act like nothing happened, but buried things rot. If you want a clean life, you have to dig. You have to face it. You have to write. Journaling isn't some soft, sentimental ritual. It's a warrior's act of facing your broken pieces without flinching. It sharpens your reason, because once you write down what you're really thinking, you start to see it clearly. A lot of what you thought was logical is just emotion you've never processed. A lot of what you called justice is just ego wanting special treatment. A lot of what you blamed on others was really your own bad reaction. Paper doesn't let you hide, and if you stick to it, 1 page a day doesn't have to be beautiful, just honest. You'll start to change, not because you're forcing yourself to become someone else, but because you'll know yourself so well that you stop lying to yourself. You stop reacting blindly. You stop living in the "that's just how I am" mindset. You start choosing how to live. You start fixing from the inside out. Stoicism doesn't tell you to be perfect. It simply says, every day, be a little better than the day before. Not because someone's watching, not for applause, but because that's how you show yourself respect. That's how you build a life you can sit with each night in silence and not run from. And I'm telling you this as someone who once buried himself in work, hid in short-lived relationships, laughed to cover the sound of his own grief. Eventually you'll realize what you need isn't another lover, another achievement, another paycheck. What you need is to sit down, face yourself honestly. No games, no dodging. Because if you don't learn to listen to your own voice, you'll forever be enslaved by how others see you. And once you can do that, once you've got the guts to hear the hard truth from your own mouth, that's when real strength begins. Not the strength of a stubborn man, but the strength of someone who knows exactly where he's weak and keeps moving anyway. And from here, you're ready for what comes next. Facing discomfort, not to avoid it, but to forge something stronger. Because growth doesn't come from comfort, it comes from friction, from scrapes, from stepping into what makes you squirm and staying awake through it. And that's where I'm taking you, right now. No one ever taught you how to sit still in discomfort. No one ever said, hold on a little longer, because right there is where the real version of you is forged. Instead, this society trains you to escape at the first sign of inconvenience. Tired? Take a break. Stressed? Step back. Rejected? Go somewhere easier. Emotions all over the place? Blame your circumstances. You were raised in an environment where every ounce of discomfort is treated as a red flag, not as an invitation to grow. I used to live that way, avoiding every confrontation, dodging every uncomfortable person, cutting off anyone who made me feel uneasy, quitting the moment something felt uncertain. And every time I did, I told myself, I'm protecting my energy. But truthfully, I was running from friction, from the necessary wounds, from the thresholds of tolerance that, had I crossed them, I would have become stronger. In Stoicism, they understand this clearly. Every ounce of growth comes through adversity. There is no forging in comfort. You want to be tough as steel? Then you must be burned, hammered, bent, reshaped. If you flinch every time it stings, retreat every time it gets unclear. You might stay intact, sure, but fragile. So fragile that one rejection email, one ignored message, one cold glance could make you question your entire worth. Here's the truth. That discomfort is the training ground. And if you avoid it, you fail the class. Let me be blunt. Personal growth isn't found in motivational seminars or polished self-help books. It's found in the exact moment you choose to stay inside what doesn't feel good. When you sit in a tense room and don't leave. When you take a blunt critique to the face and don't swing back. When you live through being misunderstood and don't beg for sympathy. I remember once having to give a talk in front of a group that I knew damn well didn't like me. People who had openly criticized me before. That day, I had every right to say, I'm uncomfortable, I'm out. But I didn't. I showed up. I stood there. My voice trembled the first 3 minutes. I heard the whispers. I saw the judgmental stares, and I kept going. I didn't deliver the speech of a lifetime, but I walked out with something more valuable than applause. I knew I stayed. I was no longer the man who ran. You can't have real confidence until you've endured the awkwardness, the hesitation, the wobbly steps, and kept going anyway. You'll never know how strong you are if you always choose the paved road. Real development happens the moment you want to quit, and don't. That second when everything in you screams to turn around and you take one more step forward. No one claps, no one records it, but something inside you hardens into steel. That's why Stoicism tells you to deliberately put yourself through discomfort. You don't have to seek out disaster, but don't hide from life like a child either. Walk in the rain, wake up earlier than your comfort allows, Work even when the fire's gone. Speak the truth, knowing it won't be well received. These are mental reps. They teach you. You can endure more than you think. And once you know that, you walk through life differently. You stop needing things to be easy. You stop hoping for life to be gentle. You start hoping you're strong enough to handle when it's not. And one day when you look back, you'll see you've become a different man. Not flawless, but solid. Not invincible, but unshakable. And that doesn't come from inspiration. It comes from friction. From every time you refuse to run. We live in a world where everyone wants personal growth, but no one wants pain. Everyone wants maturity, but no one wants to be tested. You can't have both. If you want to become a man even you can respect, you need to learn to stand in the fire without screaming, to stay quiet while your soul roars, to stop using discomfort as your excuse to abandon yourself. And when you stay long enough in that discomfort, something rare happens. You develop stability, not because the world calms down, but because you stay calm while it shakes. And from that place, you stop living just for yourself. You begin carrying responsibility. You realize people are watching you now, and it's time you don't just master yourself, but lead by example, through action. And that is exactly where we're headed next. At some point you realize, words aren't enough anymore. People don't listen to you because you speak well. They watch how you live, how you respond when insulted, how you stay calm when cornered, how you own your mistakes, how you keep promises, especially when no one's checking. And that's when it hits you. Every action you take is a message, not to brand yourself, but to remind yourself that you're living in alignment with what you claim to believe. Because there's nothing more pathetic than preaching principles while living like you don't have a single one. I fell into that trap myself. I thought understanding Stoicism was enough. I thought saying the right things meant I was on track. But then life slapped me hard. Not with theory, but with reality. I talked about emotional control, then lost it in a petty argument. I preached about consistency, then gave up because work didn't go my way. I spoke of responsibility, then quietly shifted blame when a project failed. That's when I learned, knowing is never enough. Living it is the only answer. Leading by example isn't about doing something heroic for applause. It's about holding the line when no one's watching. About refusing to lie, even when lying is easier. About waking up on time, finishing your work on time, keeping your word, without external pressure, just because that's the standard you set for yourself. The Stoics called it living in harmony with your nature, with your rational, moral, responsible self. And here's the hard part. You can't fake it. People feel it when you're putting on a show. They'll see the gap between your words and your actions, between your philosophy and your reality. Especially your kids, especially your partner. They don't need a hero. They need someone who lives what he talks about, someone they can count on. Not perfect, but real. You don't lead by example so others will admire you. You do it so you don't feel ashamed when you look in the mirror. I've stood in front of that mirror, not to fix my hair, but to ask myself, do I even trust the man I see? And for a while, the answer was no. But I didn't let myself off the hook. I didn't blame the world. I got to work. More carefully, step by step, quietly, without broadcasting it. I chose to stay calm when others snapped. I chose to tell the truth, even when it cost me. I chose to do my work in silence. No complaining, no posting for validation. I chose to send emails on time, reply to messages promptly, keep promises nobody was tracking. Those small things, over time, built something called credibility. And credibility in Stoicism isn't your reputation out there. It's your reputation with yourself. You know what the lightest feeling in the world is? Living honestly. Not authentically in that overused social media sense, but living with nothing to hide. No masks, no decorating, no fear of being found out, because you're already living as the man you want to become. Stoicism teaches that not through slogans, but through discipline. Living by principle isn't glamorous, it's necessary. Without it, life drags you around. You react impulsively, you wreck relationships, you lose trust from others and from yourself. You become someone who talks a big game, writes deep thoughts, shares vulnerable truths, but lives like a mess. And eventually, you'll feel hollow. because all of that was just a shell, and inside, you're rotting. I don't want to live like that anymore. And if you've made it this far, I know you don't want to either. No one wakes up early just to live a life they can't respect. And you don't need anyone's permission to change that. You just need to begin. Start acting each day as if someone were quietly watching, so that if they did, they'd say, "This man lives like someone's watching," because someone is. You are. And if you've made it to this point, if you've learned what you can control, how to stay composed, prepared your mind for hardship, reflected daily, endured discomfort, and started living what you believe, then you've reached the core of Stoicism. Not a philosophy to read, but a code to live. Not to be admired, but so you don't betray yourself. And if you've made it there, I've got nothing else to say, except this. Don't stop, because the world won't wait for you to be ready. But you can be ready for anything, if you start living right from the inside out. Thank you for being here. If you found this video helpful, subscribe, turn on notifications, and like this video. Don't forget to leave a comment so we can spread positivity together.